When your credit card bill shows up and there's the monthly payment that you have to make, but you're not clearing out the principal, you're actually clearing out the interest, how do you know that that number came from the right place? How do you know what your APR is? How do you know how much interest is accrued on the credit that you've borrowed? So to understand that, let's jump into this video. So first thing, we're going to understand how the interest is calculated. We're going to convert your annual interest into a daily rate, and we're also going to look at your average daily balance. So you'll understand that it's actually beneficial to clear out your credit pretty quickly. And of course, we're going to look at your billing cycle. We'll take a standard 30-day cycle and arrive at your APR eventually. So jumping right in, first thing you do to find the APR is you look at your credit card billing statement under which your APR would be mentioned. And then you take that interest rate, and here we're going to take an example of 40%. We're going to divide that by 365. Now, in some cases, it's also divided by 360, but in this example, we're just going to take 365 as the example, which arrives at your daily interest rate. Now, let's take an example wherein you borrowed $10,000 in the previous credit cycle. Now, assuming you pay back the entire 10,000, regardless of your interest rate, whether it's 5%, 10%, 40%, or even 200%, you're not going to be paying back any interest. You're just going to be paying back what you borrowed. So in this case, that would be $10,000. But if, let's say, you even have $1, let's say you've paid back $9,999 and you have $1, that is going to take an annual interest of course, your APR, and a daily interest. If you divide it by 365, you will get that number. So make sure you go ahead and do this with your current APR. So now let's look at a scenario where on the 15th day out of the 30-day cycle, or on the 15th day, you've actually paid back $6,000, which means for the remaining 15 days of the month, you actually only have $4,000 that you've borrowed on your credit card, which means for the first 15 days, your APR of 1 point something percent is actually going to be accrued on the entire 10,000 because that's the total amount. But when you pay back the 6,000, up to the first 15 days, you're going to have it on the first 10,000, your APR of 1%. And for the remainder 15 days, your daily interest is only going to be 1% of 4,000. So this is why it's best to pay off your credit cards quickly, because you're actually paying it back on a daily basis. So the quicker you can pay it off, the faster you can pay it off. Your interest day by day would reduce because your principal on a daily basis is also reducing. Now, what's the best approach you can take in order to pay as less as possible in interest? First thing, the best thing you can do is to pay off all your credit before the last date. A slightly better approach would be if you can pay as much as you can as early as possible, even if you're paying multiple times a month, just so you can get the daily balance as low as possible, such that the interest that you accrue on your daily balance is as low as possible. And the worst approach, and a lot of people are privy to the worst approach because they think that only when they get the credit card statement and it says that this is the payment that you'll have to make, this meaning they'll get two payments. One is you get the payment of the amount that you've actually borrowed, or just the monthly minimum, just the interest, so you can clear it off and wait until the end of the next billing cycle. And that's the worst approach because, of course, one thing is your daily balances are going to be very high. Second, you're going to be paying just an interest, and you've actually accrued so much debt that you've not paid off your principal, and it's going to get hard for you later on to pay off all that principal. So let's try to stick to this approach wherein you pay off all your credit card debt before the last date, or you pay as much as you can early, even if it's multiple times a month. And of course, the reason you don't wait until they send you a statement is because it's calculated on a daily basis, and not at the end of every billing cycle.